Karen thought she could control everything, but this time she picked the wrong fight. Liam Hayes stood in his backyard, the official HOA notice clenched in his fist. His stomach twisted with rage as he read the words: fine, 500 loan, violation, unauthorized, structure. And the worst part? Mandatory removal within 72 hours. His organic vegetable garden, the one he had spent years cultivating, was now labeled an eyesore. A violation, a threat to community aesthetics. Karen Voss had made her move. She was new to the HOA presidency, but everyone in Pinewood Estates already knew her reputation. Power-hungry, controlling. A woman who saw rules not as guidelines, but as weapons. Liam had followed the rules. His garden had been approved years ago. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a lifeline. His kids ate from this garden. His neighbors relied on it for fresh produce. And now, because Karen wanted control, it had to be destroyed. Not a chance. Liam stormed over to the HOA office, letter still in hand, ready to fight. Karen was waiting, sitting smugly behind her desk, tapping a perfectly manicured nail against her clipboard. "You have 72 hours, Mr. Hayes," she said sweetly. "I suggest you start digging." Liam gritted his teeth. This wasn't about rules, this was about power, and Karen was about to learn that he wasn't backing down. This wasn't about a garden, it was about greed. Liam knew something wasn't right. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was targeting him. So he started digging, and what he found, it was bigger than he ever imagined. Karen wasn't just trying to destroy his garden. She was working with a real estate developer. The plan: rip out the garden, pave over it, turn it into a private parking lot. The price tag, $2 million, and the worst part? She had paid off several HOA board members to quietly pass a new rule banning unsightly personal agriculture without a community vote. Liam felt his blood boil. This wasn't about aesthetics, it was about money, but that wasn't all. While his garden was under attack, Karen's friends in the neighborhood were breaking rules left and right. One had a 6-foot fence, strictly against HOA policy. No fines. Another had a massive, unapproved patio, no warning letters. Someone else had a bright pink mailbox, violating every neighborhood uniformity rule. No consequences. Karen didn't care about the rules. She only cared about who followed them. And now, Liam had proof. Karen thought she was untouchable. She had no idea what was coming next. Karen thought she could get away with it, but the whole neighborhood was watching. Liam wasn't the only one who saw through her lies. His neighbors, the same people who shared food from his garden, who relied on it to feed their families, were furious, and they were ready to fight back. That's when Mr. Alden, a retired investigative journalist, stepped in. "This smells like a scandal," he muttered, flipping through HOA documents Liam had gathered, "and I know how to expose one." Then there was Mia Lopez, a local photographer. She had an eye for detail and a camera ready to catch it all. Together, they started tracking Karen's every move, and one night they caught her red-handed, a secret meeting in a dimly lit cafe. Karen sitting across from a real estate developer, flipping through a folder of blueprints, the plans for her $2 million parking lot deal. Mia snapped the photos. Mr. Alden recorded the whole conversation. Karen wasn't just corrupt. She had forged HOA meeting records, lied about voting results, taken bribes. And now, they had the proof. The evidence spread like wildfire. By morning, the entire community knew the truth. Karen had tried to bulldoze Liam's garden. Now, the whole neighborhood was ready to bulldoze her reign of power. Karen was losing control, so she did the unthinkable. Liam had proof. The entire community knew the truth. Karen was cornered. And when people like her get desperate, they get dangerous. That night, Liam was woken up by a noise outside. At first, He thought it was just the wind. Then he heard it, the sound of shovels, ripping, tearing. His heart slammed in his chest. He raced to the window, and there in the darkness, a group of workers dressed in black were tearing his garden apart, ripping up the plants, smashing the wooden planters, destroying everything. Karen had hired them. Too much attention, too much backlash. She couldn't wait for legal battles, so she tried to end it her way. Liam bolted out the door. "This is private property. Get off my land." The men didn't stop. "Karen, sent us," one of them sneered. "HOA orders." Liam stood his ground. He wasn't backing down. Then floodlights flashed on, cameras everywhere. His neighbors had seen it happening. They were recording everything. Karen's last mistake. She thought she could silence one man. Instead, she had the whole neighborhood watching. Within hours, the footage was all over social media. HOA president sends goons to destroy community garden, caught on camera. Elderly, residents and families lose their fresh food supply overnight. Who's behind it? By morning, the whole town was furious. News stations picked up the story. Karen's reign of terror was about to end. Karen thought she was untouchable. Now she was about to be exposed. The emergency HOA meeting was packed, not just with residents, but reporters, lawyers, cameras. Karen sat stiffly at the front, her usual smug expression replaced with barely contained panic. She knew what was coming, but she had no way out. Liam stepped forward, holding a flash drive. "I have something to show everyone," he said, his voice steady. A video played on the big screen. The footage from that night, the hired workers, the destruction, Liam fighting to save his garden. Karen's face went pale. Then more footage, the RP. Secret meeting she had with the real estate developer, the fake HOA meeting notes, the emails proving bribes, every lie, every crime. Caught on camera, the room exploded, shouts, gasps, pure outrage. Even the real estate company backed out, announcing they wanted nothing to do with Karen's shady deals. Then, the final blow, an HOA board member stood up. "I call for an immediate vote," she said coldly, "to remove Karen Voss as HOA president permanently. The ballot. 5-0. Not a single person stood with Karen. She was finished. A security guard stepped forward. "Mrs. Voss, you need to leave." Karen shook her head in disbelief. You can't do this," she sputtered. "I run this community." But the crowd was already cheering. Karen had spent years ruling over Pinewood Estates. Now, she was forced to walk out in shame. The cameras followed her all the way to the parking lot, and Liam, he just watched her go. She had tried to erase his garden. Now she was the one being erased. Karen wanted control. Instead, she lost everything. The very next week, Pinewood Estates made it official. Karen was gone, and so was her corrupt regime. A new HOA board was formed. This time, it wasn't about power. It was about the people. The first order of business, they reversed every single one of Karen's policies. Instead of destroying gardens, they encouraged them. They created a community gardening initiative where every resident could grow fresh food for themselves and their neighbors. Karen's perfect suburban vision was replaced with real sustainability, real connection. But Karen, she had no place in this new Pinewood Estates. Her house sat on the market for months. No one wanted to live in the home of the woman who nearly tore the community apart. And when she finally sold it, for far less than she wanted, she packed up. In silence, no one said goodbye. No one waved. As she drove out of the neighborhood for the last time, she saw something in her rearview mirror that made her seethe. The community garden, not just restored, thriving. And in the center of it all, Liam, his neighbors, his children, laughing, celebrating. That night, they held a harvest festival, a celebration of not just the garden, but the victory. Kids ran through the rows of vegetables picking fresh tomatoes. Seniors shared recipes. Neighbors who had never spoken before sat together breaking bread. And at the front, Liam stood beside a new sign, a wooden plaque, freshly carved, standing right where Karen's destruction had begun. It read, "The Pinewood Community Garden, a place for growth." Karen had tried to erase it, but now it was stronger than ever. Liam smiled, watching the lights twinkle over the garden. This wasn't just about plants. It was about fighting back, about standing together, about proving that no one, not even Karen, could control a community that refused to be silenced. She was gone, but their roots, they would last forever.